In today's video, I'm going to show you how to paint amazing storm clouds in your landscapes. And we are also going to look at techniques to create detailed trees and how to paint grass. Let's begin. So I decided on this reference today with a brewing storm and brooding clouds. I was quite interested in the triangular formation of the clouds and the misty clouds on the left helping to lead our eyes into the cloud formation. For this specific painting I had in mind, I was going to leave out one of the trees in the middle and build up my composition using the fulcrum composition technique. I wanted to break up that foreground to show some barren soil for more interest and contrast in this painting. For my color palette, I decided on titanium white, blue grey, buff titanium, brilliant rose, violet grey, cadmium orange, cadmium yellow, raw sienna, terre verte, Van Dyke brown, cobalt violet, primary magenta, primary cyan, and ultramarine blue. For my brushes, I use some angled sculpting brushes, some synthetic hair flats, old rugged hog bristle brushes, lettering brushes, at least 4 of them, and my palette knife for mixing paint. On a canvas board, approximately 90 centimeters by 65 centimeters, I will proceed to draw in my main ideas using a synthetic hair brush and some liquid gel to dissolve the paint. At this stage, I just want some non-committal lines on the surface just to anchor in the main shapes into place. Then I start blocking in the sky to break the distinguishing line between the clouds, and then I will start blocking in the main shapes of the clouds. At this stage, I'm using large synthetic hair flats and I paint in the sky using big, bold brush strokes. To indicate form and dimension, I make sure to put down loose and interesting brush strokes, and I'm painting in the large shapes, keeping value and color temperature in mind. Usually, the block in is the most rapid phase in the process, and usually I get quite excited at the finish of my block in as the work has reached its first and infant phase of the process. When we talk about color temperature, we must realize that cooler colors makes forms recede and seem distant, while more keyed up and warmer colors gives us an indication of sunlight and is the forthcoming shapes in our painting. Therefore, we can say that the warm makes forms proceed and look closer. Like the warmer yellows and reds I'm using in the foreground really makes those storm clouds seem far away. Let's proceed to look deeper into the color dynamics of the clouds. As indicated by the arrow, we can see the lightest part of the cloud, which is not white. Here we are looking at a mix of titanium white with buff titanium and a touch of cadmium yellow. Then I proceed to take that mix and create a lighter mix of the same color plus more titanium white. Looking at the underpart of the cloud now, I see the darker and cooler colors happening with a grey on the misty cloud on the left visibly lighter than those shadows of the underbelly of the brooding central cloud. This requires a mix of blue-grey, violet-grey, cobalt violet, cyan and ultramarine blue with a little magenta, and can now cross-mix with a lighter pool of color to varying degree as I see necessary for the darks. Then we have the open part of the blue-grey sky on the right as indicated by the arrow on the right. And here we see a mix of cyan, ultramarine blue and blue-grey with titanium white in the mix. Looking at the temperature of those clouds underneath the main bulge of white in the storm clouds, we see the warmer yet darker color. This can be mixed using the first pool of color. We mixed as the base color and add in a little cadmium orange, cadmium yellow, and a touch of brilliant rose into the mix. And then I adjust the mix, a warmer buff titanium, by adding in a little cadmium yellow and cadmium orange. And I can use those mixes to adjust as I feel necessary in my clouds. As we proceed to sculpt and model our shapes further in the second phase of the painting, we can start putting in warmer and lighter values into our clouds, with the darker, more somber mixes helping to support the lighter values on top. I feel this technique of layering the lighter values on top of the darker ones less confusing. It seems to create a better synergy between the transitions of dark to light, rather than working with both light and dark at the same time. If the dark paint of the first layer is still wet, the subsequent layer of lighter paint can blend subtly, and so we can start building incredible but subtle structure into our clouds, with the lighter shapes now making the darker shapes recede. In our rendering of the clouds, we must caution not to go too small with the brushes. And although I tend to work intuitively when using the brush tools, I will feel uncomfortable using brushes that are too small for the job. As a general rule, I would suggest using larger brushes to what you would normally be comfortable with. Larger brush strokes gives a better feeling of movement to the clouds, and smaller brushes can make clouds look static. I'm now ready to place the main trees into the painting. Many artists would argue that this is the wrong way to go about this, and that you should bring in those tree shapes in the beginning when you are blocking in. For me, I would say that it depends on the context of the scene that I'm painting. I really wanted to see how those clouds would work with the foreground first, as the depth element of the painting was important to me initially, and I was working on creating the color harmony between the sky and the ground and seeing how those large designs will impact the picture altogether. But there are works where the trees was the overarching main idea of the picture without a doubt. Here, I was looking for a synergy between the elements of the sky, ground and tree before I commit to the size and proportions of the trees. But let me know, what do you think? How do you feel about the process? Do you think it's a good idea to put the trees early on in the beginning or put them in later? Let me know in the comments section. Keying in the last highlights of the clouds, I now proceed to integrate the clouds with the trees by bringing in some backlight from the clouds behind those trees. At this stage, I just have to be careful of overworking as I can get carried away with details. The warmer yellow oranges really help me in bringing color harmony into the painting. So let me tell you a story about how I became so fascinated with clouds. Many years ago, I was doing deliveries for a printing company. I was still stuck in my 9-to-5, dreaming about becoming a full-time artist. The job was very high-pressured work. We were very busy, and the traffic on our roads here in Sculpting is crazy. I remember we were particularly busy one November, close to the end of the year. I have just delivered a painting to a client back then. It was one of my first big sales as an artist, and I had to ask permission to use the company car in order to deliver the artwork. At least they were understanding and allowed me to do so after work. On my way back, I was stuck in a horrible traffic jam, and I was thinking, great, what now? I then decided to just make the best of the situation and decided to look at the afternoon storm that was unfolding as I was literally bumper to bumper on the highway. That afternoon was probably one of the shortest of my life, as I was witnessing the wonders of nature unfolding in front of me. Luckily, I had my digital camera with me at the time, and the traffic actually moved slow enough for me to take pictures at leisure. At points, I would even stop the car on the side of the road just to get out and take pictures of the clouds. Instead of feeling drained, I felt elated, refreshed. The time in the traffic jam went by like it was nothing. And I've been taking pictures of clouds and skies ever since, which led me to painting like this today. When it comes to trees, I've discovered that cobalt violet works very well with terverte green. It helps to create combinations of greens that is natural and doesn't take over the whole painting. I can really recommend these two colors. Go check them out. The violet for the shadow mixed with terverte, and the terverte with just a touch of raw sienna or cadmium orange, whichever you wish. I've never had problems with greens again after using these colors. And if you want to know what the Terverte is like, it's like sap green's calmer cousin. I can feel that the painting is unfolding, and I'm creating the depth in the field that I intended to, working those fine dry branches to give the rugged appearance of the bush. I have those oranges of the exposed foreground, and it's combining nicely with the dry grasses in the midfield. With a hog bristle brush, I can break up the field of grasses with some subtle highlight colors. I then proceed to give more texture to the foreground using one of my sculptor brushes. I then decided to bring some darks using Van Dyke Brown with a hog bristle brush. I proceeded to paint in those sporadic grasses in the foreground. I just want the grass in this area to look sparse, with the exposed red sand breaking through in this section. A very important tip for painting complex, beautiful trees is to create beautiful negative space between branches. You really want that backlight of the sky sparkling through the canopies of the trees. With a lettering brush, I can now proceed to neaten up the excess paint from those branches and bring them more out and make those negative shapes more pronounced. I am using a little blue-grey plus cadmium orange with Van Dyke Brown to create a subtle highlight on the tree branches and create form in those branches. Then I'm coming over the top of the foliage with a lettering brush, loaded with some cadmium orange with a little raw sienna, and just adding in those highlights on the tree. I try not to paint the edge near the sky too light, as I don't want the contrast between the sky and the tree to disappear. At the shadow end of the tree, those highlights are really helping to give the indication of overarching foliage. And just tweaking those sky holes with some blue really helps to create the detail in those trees. Looking at this tree, I can now just tweak those edges and bring in those fine little branches. Everything in this work is about how the edges meet and bringing those fine little branches where the sky and the tree meets, giving me that sparkle and complex detail of the African bush on a summer's afternoon thunderstorm. Thank you for watching till the end. Don't forget to comment and subscribe. Until we meet again on this channel, have a wonderful day.